Hi, it's Miss Pitzel at the Appleton West Library, and I'm book talking it's called a dark fantasy book, but I would probably put it more in the horror genre. Talk about that in a minute. So the title of the book is Belladonna, and some of you may know Belladonna is a plant that is poisonous, and Adalyn Grace is the author of the book. So dark fantasy is kind of this new genre where it's part fantasy, part horror. They say fantasy with horror elements. In reading this, I would put it more in the horror category than I would in the fantasy. So our main character is Signa. It is historical, set in mid to late 1800s. I think they give us an exact time period later on. I actually thought it was kind of set in the United States down south until we meet some characters later who are lords and ladies. I'm like, okay, I guess this is taking place in England. So Signa, how it starts very early. If you know anything about Edgar Allan Poe, there's the Masque of the Red Death, which most people feel is about the plague, because all these people die, are at this party and they die, and that's kind of how this happens. Signa is a baby, and her parents are showing her off at this party, and all of these people, and it has to do with something they drank or ate. So the people who didn't drink or eat were okay, and everybody else died. So Signa has been passed from one relative to another. Living with her grandmother was the best, but she's lived with some very not nice people and people who've used her, abused her, took advantage of the fact that she has a inheritance. They couldn't turn her into a pauper. She's coming up. She's getting close to the age of 20, which is when she can take her inheritance. Which, given the time period, is pretty good because women. That was unusual for women to be able to come into inheritance like that without somebody else overseeing it. So Signa, like I said, has been passed around. And this is why I would say fits more in the horror realm. Signa has always been able to see, she calls them spirits. So basically she's always been able to see ghosts. Some people when they die, they become spirits because they don't cross over to the other realm. Well, there is another character who is very important in this, and that would be Death. Death is a character in this, and Signa can also see Death, and she can sense him even if he's not physically, that she can see him. And she has at first it's kind of a hate relationship with Death, but then she starts to understand him a little bit better. Because what happens is she eventually ends up with her mother's sister's family. So her mother's passed away. Her aunt, her mother's sister, has also passed away, and passed away from in a really horrible way. And it was Signa figures out she was poisoned with belladonna, and her cousin Blythe is now having the same symptoms as her mother. So there's a little bit of mystery in this and trying to figure out who is poisoning Blythe, who has the most to gain, why did somebody poison, I believe it's Lilia, is her aunt that was murdered. So there's a lot of family dynamics going on, but like I said, to me this is definitely more ghosty horror than it is dark fantasy. It also has a whole lot of romance in it, and the romance is there's romance with other characters, but the main romance in here is really Signa's relationship with Death and how she goes from hating him to sort of kind of understanding him to then kind of relying on him and then to seeing him in another light as well. And it was just, like I said, what I felt about this book, because I always tell people horror is not my genre. And yet I've read, in the last year and a half, I've read a whole lot of horror books, and I went, oh, I kind of like that. And I really did enjoy this. I think the concept or the idea was kind of cool. Death as a character is nothing new, but the romance that is going on between Cigna and Death, and just other things, and there were some surprises in this book that I wasn't expecting, and I felt like, oh, I should have seen that coming. So I did enjoy this book. I kind of was like, what am I going to say about this book without giving too much away? But I think I've had plenty to say about this book. So once again, when I look this up on my program where I buy books and, I read about books, oh, it's a dark fantasy. But really, to me, I'm going to have to probably relabel this and say it's really horror ghosts, because there are creepy ghosts in this as well. So come on, if you like horror, we got a horror display up right now, even though it's not near Halloween. Or I'll help you find something else, because it's my job to keep everybody reading, and sometimes reading outside your comfort or genre zone. So have a fantastic day.